Hi, it's Myles here at Fabricana. Today we're doing a little knitting video. It's an instructional video to make buttonholes. We at Fabricana have tons of DIY content for you on our YouTube channel. We've got sewing content, home decor, and of course knitting. We have a couple more knitting videos here that you can look at, but today we're going to be focusing on a buttonhole. So we're starting with kind of an aspirational buttonhole, maybe for somebody who's a more intermediate or advanced knitter. So we're going to start with that one. It's a totally customizable buttonhole for the size, so that's great. And then for those of you who are, just looking for a really quick method, we are going to be doing a yarn over buttonhole as well. So without further ado, let's get started. So in order to prepare for this video, I just did a bit of knitting. You're never going to start a buttonhole in your first row, so I've knit a few rows up. And then you're never going to start a buttonhole right at your edge either, so I'm going to knit in 4 stitches. So step 1, between your 2 stitches, you're going to bring your yarn forward. Then you're going to slip the first stitch purlwise, and then you're going to bring your yarn to the back, and what that's going to do is secure that first edge of your buttonhole so it's not all kind of loosey-goosey and stretchy. So then we're not knitting any of these stitches. We're going to do a 3 stitch buttonhole. So we are going to slip the first stitch from our right needle or left needle to the right. Then we're going to slip the first stitch that we slipped over that one. So we've cast off 1 stitch. We haven't knit it, we've just cast it off. We're going to do that for the second one as well. I'm slipping the next stitch purlwise and then slipping the other stitch over it. So now I've cast off 2. We're going to do that one more time. I'm slipping the next stitch purlwise and then putting 1 stitch over the other. So now I've cast off 3 stitches, but that last stitch that I have is on my right needle. I'm just going to move it back to the left needle. So actually we can see our cast off, and that is the bottom of our buttonhole. So I'm going to stop there, and then I'm going to pick it up to do the cast on of the top of the buttonhole. So once we have that little cast off done, we're actually going to turn our work over, and we're going to be doing what's called a cable cast on. We have to basically cast on stitches across the top. We've just cast off a bunch on the bottom, so now we have to get those stitches back. So the cable cast on, we move the yarn to the back of our work, and we actually put the needle between the first 2 stitches. So we're not going into the stitch, we're just putting the needle between the 2 and below the left-hand needle. We knit like normal. We wrap our yarn counterclockwise, and then we slide the left needle over the right, and that creates an extra stitch. So then we need to put that stitch onto our left-hand needle, but I'm going to kind of twist that stitch a little bit so it'll be nice and tight. So now we've added 1 stitch. I'm going to pull it a little bit tighter. I don't want to go too tight because it's going to be hard to get my needle between those 2 stitches. So I've cast on 1. Now we did a 3 stitch cast off, but we actually have to cast on 4 stitches because one of those stitches gets slipped over the other to make the buttonhole nice and tight. Like I said, we don't want a loosey-goosey buttonhole. So we've cast on 1. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the cable cast on. I'm putting my needle, my right hand needle, between the first 2 stitches on my left hand needle. Then I'm wrapping the yarn around, sliding the needle over the right needle, and I've created another stitch. I'm going to transfer that onto my left hand needle. Again, I'm not going to pull that too tight because I need to be able to get my needle in there. So I've cast on 2. I'm going to do a 3rd stitch, transfer that stitch onto the left needle. So I've done 3. Like I said, we need to do 4. because one of them is going to get slipped away. So here is the fourth one. I'm going to place that onto my left-hand needle. I'm going to turn my work over, keep my yarn to the back. I'm going to slip the first stitch over, and then I'm going to slide the last stitch that I cast on over that stitch, and that is essentially our buttonhole. Now I can just continue knitting as per normal. I'm going to do a few more rows just so you can kind of see what the buttonhole looks like in the middle of your work, and that'll give you a better idea if you're ready to try this buttonhole. So I'm just admiring my little 3-stitch buttonhole, and I should mention the great thing about this buttonhole is it's totally adjustable. We could have done 2 stitches if we're working with a smaller button. If we're working with like a huge button that are often in fashion, you can adjust the size of your buttonhole to fit the size of your button. It's a good idea to kind of rest your button on your work and see how many stitches across the button is, and maybe reduce it by 1 stitch. So if you find that your button is about 8 stitches wide, maybe just make your buttonhole 7 stitches wide. Your buttonhole will always stretch to fit over it, but you don't want your buttonhole overly large because then your buttons might come undone easily. If you're finding you're a little bit intimidated by this process, there were a lot of new techniques. The cable cast on is something that takes a little bit of getting used to. Maybe I'm just going to share with you a hint to make a yarn over buttonhole. So we've done yarn overs previously in our increasing method when we show you how to increase your stitches when knitting. So if we want to make a buttonhole, we don't necessarily want to increase our stitches, but we do want to create that hole. So I'm going to show you the technique. We're going to knit the 4 stitches we did as previous. It's called a yarn over, so we're just going to bring our yarn to the front over the other needle. We're going to knit that stitch, and then because we've just made one, we need to decrease one. So I'm just going to do a simple decrease of knitting 2 stitches together. So now that totally balances out. We've made one and we've decreased one. I'm just going to kind of knit a little bit back and forth. So I'm just purling on the back of my knitting. I'm working in stockinette stitch, and I'm just going to do one more row of knitting on the front just to give you that really good idea of what the yarn over buttonhole looks like. So here we have it. Hopefully you'll be able to see that. We have created quite a good size hole with that yarn over, but that's not adjustable. That's the hole that it is the hole that it is, and if you can find a button that fits through that, you are good. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you've enjoyed learning about our little adjustable buttonhole and our fun little yarn over buttonhole. If you have other buttonhole techniques that you'd like to share with us, please do. We could potentially do a future video for that in the future. Or if you're having any other difficulty with other knitting techniques, please let us know. We may be able in the future to do a video on those techniques as well. Don't forget, we have lots of other sewing content and home decor content, lots of fun stuff on our YouTube channel, so subscribe and turn on your notifications. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We're hoping to get verified on Instagram, so we are looking for more Instagram followers as well. So again, thank you so much. Enjoy your knitting, and we'll see you next time.